It's Ken Skip Hill here in Team Skip World Headquarters just outside of Denver, Colorado. I'm just going to quickly do an intro to set up the following video segments for a seminar workshop that I did down in Kingston, Jamaica a couple months ago. That is, if you can hear it, Christmas music in the background, so it's been a couple months. You don't want to just throw the video segments at everybody without some sort of intro letting them know what was coming. So essentially it's my training philosophy, my supplementation ideas, nutrition, skip loading, all that sort of stuff. A lot of good information. I also wanted to give you a heads up too, because quite a bit darker in the video segments. When I was down in Jamaica, my wife and I spent half of that week on a beach. So when I'm rubbing my head and I'm rubbing my eyes during the seminar, it's not because I'm bored or because I'm tired. It's because the top of my head was burnt pretty bad and my eyes were really dry from being out on the beach for 3 or 4 days. So I don't want anybody to think that I was bored or not enjoying myself during the seminar. A lot of information. Hope you like it. If I keep going to my phone, it's only because I did make some notes on here, so I have a little bit more that I do up here. But you know, just background what I've done. I'm not the kick everybody's butt kind of bodybuilder. I just got into it with middle of the road genetics, and I needed to find a way to win, and that way was to learn as much as I could about nutrition and conditioning. So I'm the guy that shows up that looks like I have no skin because I can't win any other way. So what it did is it just kind of blossomed from there. I had a lot of people approach me and say, how do you get like that, get me like that? And I started scratching my head one day because I'm not terribly bright, but I'm no fool either. So I thought, I wonder if I could make a couple bucks doing this. So I started a business back early 2000. Happened to catch a break because that's when the internet bodybuilding message boards and stuff really started to take off, and the United States is considered the kind of the mecca, kind of the center of bodybuilding. So now I'm fortunate enough to be able to stay home with my kids, and they drive me nuts all day, and I don't get a whole lot of work done until they go to sleep at night. But it's still a lot better than it sounds. I do work with some athletes. Like I said, I've had NFL players that I work with, especially linemen, because they like to get kind of chunky in the off season. And then before they get back to camp, they decide they got to get it straight. So they come to Denver. I live in Denver, Colorado, just outside of Denver, Colorado, so our elevation is quite high. We have a United States Olympic training facility there for that reason, because you train at a high altitude, you come down to regular elevation. Even fat linemen can run all over running backs for a couple of weeks, until the elevation catches up with them. And as much as I know about elevation, I thought it was kind of funny that I ran into these numbers the other day, so just to give you perspective. But at a higher elevation, your body has to adapt to function, whether it be from a sports standpoint or not, with less oxygen. So your RBCs, your hemoglobin, and your hematocrit levels, they all change because your body has to try to function on less oxygen. It'll take 40 days, and this kind of surprised me because I go back and forth all the time, high elevation, low elevation. It'll take 40 days for your blood to return to normal when you go down to elevation. So I don't know if you guys are NFL athletes, but if you see the Broncos playing, my Broncos playing, dominating this year, when the other teams come in town and Peyton's running that no-huddle offense, he's killing them. He's killing those linemen because they're just sucking air so bad. So when they're on the sideline sucking on oxygen, that's why. But that's the reason, part of the reason that these athletes will come with me, come to where I am to train prior to going into their season or into camp. And nutrition and supplementation is a big part of that. I've trained for 30 years, so I know a lot about training too, and I'll touch on my ideas and philosophies around weight training for muscle, things like that. But my area of expertise is nutrition and conditioning, supplementation, that sort of thing. If you've got more skin than you want, my motto for my business is skin is overrated. So if you need to get rid of skin, I'm the guy with skin. Ideology and philosophy, and I'm real simple when it comes to this. And it sounds, you don't overcomplicate things. We've all heard it a million times. We try to live by it. Are there trainers here too? I mean, who trains? Got a couple of them? Okay, cool. And two, at the end, if you want to talk, I know there was some talk about business. I don't have that up there, but I don't know to what degree. If you guys have questions about business, internet business, things like that, I'd be happy to answer those questions too. But not to overcomplicate things. And it was funny because I had a quick little story. I'm kind of a story guy. I'm a talker too. But I'm a story guy. So I've got a 13-year-old son. We have 4 kids. And only one of them's a boy. And so my 13-year-old son, he started working out. I used to train at the hardcore gym because I got to go in there and, I got to be an animal and got to move weights. But I've got kids that want to go to the gym too. And I train with my wife now. And no offense to my wife, because my wife is cool, she's gorgeous, and after 20 years, she's still awesome. But I'm training with my wife. And that's a little different than training with, with another guy and trying to rip it up, thinking that you're beast and untouchable. So anyway, the kids want to come along, so I've knocked myself down a couple notches. So I don't train at Armbrust Pro very much, where all the pros, I don't know if you guys are familiar with bodybuilding, but I mean, Phil Heath is a friend of mine. I competed against him back in '03 when he competed in his first show and stepped on stage not having a clue what he was doing, pretty much just kicked everybody's ass eating McDonald's. He was certainly destined for the pro ranks, and apparently was destined for his 3rd Olympic win here this last weekend. And I don't know, I try not to take sides and be biased. I know a lot of the pros, but because I know him and I know the type of guy he is, I do like him and I do like to see him win. I think it's good for the sport. And there pretty much was him. I don't care who you're a fan of. Apologizing ahead of time, there was him, and there was everybody else this last weekend. He pretty much dominated, which was good to see. So, his wife, if you guys know anything, his wife is battling breast cancer, which if you have a regular job to go to and you're trying to support your wife, do something like that, it is hard enough. You have to still stay on your game and remain at the top of your game, best bodybuilder on the planet. That's I give anybody respect for that. So maybe one day we'll be off and Kai will win. So, I don't know. It's a little jab at Kai. But back to the 13-year-old story. My son, we go to this, taking the kids down because they got to go to another gym. We got to go to a gym where everybody can do something. They can go rock climbing, they can work out. So my son starts working out, and I'm watching him work out across the gym, and I'm thinking to myself, and it brought back memory when I first started, and this brings back the don't overcomplicate things. He's just bouncing around doing what he wants to do and checking it out. He's growing because he's done nothing before. Hasn't done any training before, nothing specialized, not terribly efficient, but he's getting it done. And sometimes I think when I'm looking at him, like, I wish I didn't know what I know. How donuts, when you get older, make you fat if you eat one. And, if you're not training perfectly, you're not going to grow. And it reiterates the whole keep it simple thing. Yes, there's going to be a point where he's going to have to maybe come to me, and I'm going to have to help him set something up to become more efficient. But in the meantime, he's progressing so well that I just want to leave him alone and let him do what he wants to do. And that carries over into a lot of what we're doing. Sure, I've been trained 28 years. Some of you guys have probably put in, or women, quite a few years too. So maybe a point you need to make it more efficient, and you don't want to waste time. I completely respect that. And if it's the case where you want to hire somebody, Shanique or any of these other trainers, that can save you a lot of time too. But in the meantime, trial and error. There's something to be said for trial and error. When you play with things, you play with your training and your nutrition, and you're making notes and you're keeping track of things, that's where you find out. I mean, there's a huge logical component here. You can keep track of what you're doing, and if you're progressing, great, keep doing it. If you're not, then make a few changes. And that's the part about keeping it simple. When you keep it simple and the variables are low, you know what's working when it's working. And you know what's not working if it's not. Sounds simple, but if you're doing 12 different things, or you change 6 different things at once, and all of a sudden you start progressing, that's great, until you try to figure out why it is you're progressing and you don't have any ideas. So it comes back, again, to just keeping it as simple as you can, and not overcome. And it really goes for anything, whether it's training, whether it's your nutrition, your supplementation. And I'll touch on supplementation with nutrition and skip loading. Just by a show of hands, and I don't know that anybody has, but has anybody heard of skip loading or refeeds, or okay, cool. All right, right. All right, fair enough. And I want to, I'll go over that to competitors. Any competitors, anybody compete or want to compete or is thinking about it down the road? Or okay, cool, good to see. All right, you think right? Huh? Right. No, that's good. That's cool. That's always good to see. So we have a mix, which is always nice. As far as training, look, Skip, what training protocol works best? Dorian, low rep, Mountain Dog. Anybody know Mountain Dog? John Meadows? No? Okay, high volume guy. Pretty big on the internet right now. He writes and works for Elite FTS as well. John Meadows, Mountain Dog training. I use him as an example because he's a high volume kind of guy, and that hasn't been very trendy. I say trendy because everything trends. Training really isn't terribly complicated. Trainers will try to make it complicated, and writers for magazines. I wrote for Muscle Mag for quite a while. I still write for Flex every now and then, and we will throw in things, and there's just trends. Back in the 70s when Arnold was training, high volume. You guys, he just would do a ton of work. Then it went to Haney, where it was 6 to 8 reps and that sort of thing, and more closer to failure train. Then you get to Dorian. Then we're real low volume, high intensity, rip every muscle in your body to where you can't compete anymore because, and all these ways are effective for a short period of time. Even after Dorian, when it comes back into the 90s, that was a high intensity, low volume. People still find DC training, dog crab training. Okay, DC is. I've worked with him for almost 10 years. He's based off of Intense Muscle. He also owns True Nutrition, True Protein, that sort of thing. His training is that low volume, high intensity as well. Very effective. I use it myself. I probably grew more in that 2 or 3 years than I had in a long time. But I pulled everything because I'm old and brittle. And so anytime you're pushing the envelope to where, and you have to get growth, you got to do something different that your body isn't used to. So even if you find something that works real well, and maybe the low volume, high intensity, it's only going to work real well for so long. And then you're going to battle with injuries, much like Dorian did. The guy ripped at pretty much anything he could rip to the point that he couldn't really compete anymore because it had changed his look so much. So it was a price that he paid. As much as I've had tons of clients who have had that type of, those types of results, big results. You lower the volume, to some degree you tend to recover a little bit better. But the higher volume, it all trends. It's coming back around now, which is nice to see, because when you get older, it's hard on your joints, it's hard on tendons, and you start pulling things, and you're constantly injured. So with the training, I don't really have one way or one style of training that I advocate for. If somebody says to me, well, what do I do because I've been doing this training program and I haven't been progressing, then I want to know what they're doing at that point not progressing with, and then we're going to change it up. Basically, the body will grow from what it's not used to. So even if you're doing real well, like I said, on one particular, you still want to change that out. And if you're old, there's a lot of factors that you have to take into consideration. One of the main ones, too, really is age. And how much have you beat yourself up? And a lot of times that's not I'm 43, and it's not as much as I'm 43 as I've been training almost 30 years. So it probably would be better to say I'm more like a 58-year-old because I've got bad knees, I got a bad back, because the more years, it's like your training years are dog years. The more years that you have training, that's really the most important thing, because even perfect form, and everybody should be training with as good control as possible to save your joints, save your back, save your knees, that sort of thing. But even when you're doing everything right, over time, and I say this over and over, it's a mantra that I have, that I've said for years, repetition in and of itself is degenerative. You can do the same, you can do the squats perfectly, but if you squat 10,000 times, Your knees are gonna wear down. Your back is gonna wear down. Benching, whether shoulders, your wrists, whatever. Over time, you're just gonna beat them up. They're gonna wear down. Now you're gonna be really glad when you start hurting when you've been using good form, because if you weren't, it would have taken half that time. You'd be messed up. I've had back issues, probably the only thing that I've really dealt with over 30 years. But I've herniated the same disc 6 times, and it's a constant battle. But the alternative for any of us in dealing with injuries, that's why I don't have a whole lot of sympathy when people come up to me and say, oh yeah, I just keep having the injuries, and that's why I can't train my legs. I'm like, well, what do you do? And they don't do anything. It's like, well, that's the alternative. It's like you just threw up your hands and gave up. Jesus. You got to find something to do. You may not be able to squat. Big deal. The only people who say squats make your legs huge are people who squat really well and can squat a lot of weight, because that's their gift. Squats can make your legs big, so can leg presses, so can hands. Leg extensions probably don't. But nonetheless, if you're moving weight, you know, there are some people who are tall who just are not built the right way to squat correctly. So instead of forcing yourself into an exercise that could potentially injure you because it doesn't feel right, pass on it. I've seen plenty of guys. Same with deads. Everybody thinks they have to pull deads for a big back. Johnny O. Did he, I pose this question to anybody who, Johnny O. Jackson, right? You guys, okay. Did the back, which came first, the big deadlift or the back? You know, which came first, chicken or the egg? I mean, it's one of those types of things. Is he pulling big numbers because mechanically he's built that way and his back is big and his back is strong anyway? Platts is another good example. Did he have legs, big, huge legs because he squatted all the time? Or did he squat all the time because he was so damn strong and he just looked sick squatting 315 50 times and he wanted everybody to look at him? You know, which one is it? And I'm not to say all I'll tell you is I've seen Bill Heath for years, and that man, if I explain how he trained, because it's different than what you see in the videos and the pictures, the guy's never pulled a dead in his life. His idea of pulling a dead is if you drop a 25-pound dumbbell off of the bench and he's got to bend over and pick it up. I've seen him get, and I'm not picking on him, I mean, I love the guy, I think he's a great guy. But I've seen him get ready for shows and only use machines. So sometimes when people say, well, you're telling me one thing, Skip, but I saw Phil train. Okay, Phil, here, just, and most of you might already get it. They're over here is like us, okay, we're in this real big group of like 4 billion people. There's Phil, and there's Kai, and there's Branch. We're so not, they should put them on another planet, because they aren't that way because of the way they train. They aren't that way because of the way they eat. There's some other factors in there, but make no mistake, I know many people who use those other factors, and they don't look like Phil and Kai. So really what it comes down to, and that's not to take away from them working hard. Clearly they work hard. That's a no-brainer. I guess my point is there's thousands and thousands of people who work every bit as hard as they do who will never have a chance to work like that. I trained for 28 years. I've done this in gyms that I think nobody on this planet could have trained harder than me. And I can't come in. I got as close, I took second to him in 03 at his second show, and that's as close as I'll ever get to him. Trust me when I say first and second wasn't as close as Phil and Kai, okay? There was quite a big gap. It just didn't look like it on the scorecard because there was ones and there was twos. Point being, when it comes down to it, what they do, really, you should forget about it. Because, and this is with trainers, if anybody's going to work with a trainer, anybody's going to work with a nutrition, you want to work with somebody who comes from those middle of the road genetics, maybe even bad genetics. Maybe he was just a fat, chubby dude who had no muscle, or she, for that matter. I mean, when you take someone who can take a situation and they had average middle-of-the-road genetics or poor genetics and they did something with it, then they know something. Pros don't know much more than anybody else. They just react differently. Phil don't even carry a water bottle around or a drinks 3 or 4 liters a day, or did. 4 liters a day. How many times have you been told you gotta drink so much water, you gotta do this? Phil don't have to. So there's a different set of rules. So, you know, the rest of us, my main point is just the rest of us are dealing with these average genetics, and we're not going to, that's not going to change. Someone's playing the hand you're dealt. You sit down at the poker table, anybody play poker? The game is not over when you're dealt your first 2 cards. It looks real good if you got a pair of kings, but a 6, 7 suited, you still got 5 more cards, and the straight flush will beat a pair of kings. You got to play the hand out, and sometimes that takes a long time. Play the hand you dealt. I like to say, I was dealt a pair of 6s 28 years ago. So you play the hand you're dealt. As far as the high volume, low volume, high rep, low rep, again, you know, it just comes back to what you're doing now. If you're sitting there with a program that you don't think is very effective, take what you're doing and flip it over to something else. Your progress is recovery. Okay? Most people train hard enough. And just, I gotta say this too. If you're thinking, well, I'm not really here, you know, to build muscle, I want to even tone, I want to get in better shape. You need to build muscle. There's nobody in this room who doesn't need to build a little bit of muscle. So that's why sometimes I cringe when I hear, oh, I just want to tone, or even when I train myself, I just want to tone. Or somebody says, oh, I'll wake up tomorrow morning and be too big. Girl, I've been waiting for 28 years to wake up too damn big, and it has not worked yet. Okay? At some point, if it did happen, you just go back to sleep and not train for a couple of days. Everything will go away. If it came that fast, it will go that fast. You'll be all right in the end. It won't ever come that quick. So you work your butt off, you do get the muscle, because that's the hardest part of anything, right? The dieting and everything is more to be a head game and competing. But if you're just losing weight, nobody, and I'll get to this when I talk about nutrition, and especially the cardio too, I kind of put them together. Nobody should be starving. No one should feel their strength. You shouldn't be dragging, feeling like you're pulling your tail, or your butt along behind you as you go through your day, not being able to function, that sort of thing. And I'll get into that more with skip loading and nutrition, and I try to separate the two, because my method of dieting is certainly not run-of-the-mill. So I'll cover both. You know, I like to cover regular nutrition, because even when you are skip loading and you're using that protocol, you still have what's considered to be a regular diet throughout the week anyway. But again, when things aren't working out for you, for training, you need to go and take a look at what you're doing and just flip-flop around. Recovery is the issue. If you're doing too much work and you're not sleeping, you're not getting the nutrition, then you're not going to be recovering and you're not going to be growing. And even if you say, well, I'm good with where I am, trying to maintain, if you're not recovering from your workouts, then your muscle isn't going to look right anyway, because it's going to be flat. It's going to be big. You're just not going to look big. You're not going to look full. It's like not training for a couple of weeks and sitting in sandals and eating a bunch of grapes every day. Not that I would use something like that. I have a crepe addiction. They're like crack or something. I've been eating crepes twice a day. I would take my fat ass to the crepe place at 10:30 before they close and get 3 of them and take them back to the room. Because I know I'm going to be hungry at midnight. So I've got quite a mess to clean up when I get back, which is going to be hard because I leave for New York City 4 days later after I get back for a show. But anyway, I'll get it back. Before we move on, yeah, any questions with the training or?
Yeah, but first thing, thanks for putting on the event. One question, sometimes you'll see somebody or a personal trainer athlete whatever, they have, like say, really good arms or a really big chest. Do you train different body parts differently? So like for example, when you're putting a program together, is it that some parts of your body respond better to high volume, or some parts respond better to low intensity?
Good question. Yes, but it's not that simple. Usually if you're walking around and you see your trainer or you see somebody in the gym that has a good body part, they're lying. They didn't really, usually, sometimes, but not usually, they didn't train that muscle any different than anything else, it just responded better. Okay? If you are that person and you want a balanced physique, then you need to take a look at the priority of your training and backseat those quality, you know, if your chest is good and your legs are good, then don't give them priority. And when I say don't give them priority, early in the week, when your energy is higher, you want to train in those weaker areas. Earlier in your workout session, maybe you have, I don't know how your workout is set up, but if you're training 3 muscle groups in a day and chest is your strong point, then you may not want to lead with that. The other thing that you have to look at too is there's a couple reasons you might have a weak area. Okay, the weak area might be that you're training it. Legs tend to be weak for a lot of people because they just don't like to train this too hard, or they come up with some lame knee, back thing, disease that no one's heard of before. They diagnose themselves with, and then you just look at it, I never heard of that. And I Googled it, and there wasn't nothing there. So that's one thing. They may not be training real hard, but there's the other aspect that is overlooked a lot. I write about this a lot in my articles when I'm writing about training and recovery. Matter of fact, I write about it so much that my editor finally said, maybe you should write about something else. I go, well, people aren't getting it, so I want to keep writing about it. And that is overtraining a muscle group. Some people will come and they'll say, and this happens a lot with secondary muscle groups, but shoulders, arms, things like that, they can't grow. Guys freely, their arms won't grow. It's hilarious. They just, I do everything. I don't know. You do everything, and then like, what do you mean by everything? I train 3 times a week, and I do. And if I'm offending anybody, and if you're doing it, that's your own fault. I'll say that ahead of you. It's your own fault. Training arms 3 times a week because they're weak isn't going to allow for the recovery that you need. Plus, when you're training chest and back, arms are getting hammered anyway. I still say to this day, and I did this with myself, I'm real narrow-shouldered, and I got a problem. When I was trying to compete and win, I was too small and too narrow. So I'm thinking, man, I got to do more for chest and back and everything else, but I had good arms. And I would kick back and not do as much arm work, and the damn things would grow more. And what was happening is, most of it, I firmly believe this, and I write about this as well. When you train chest and back heavy, shoulders and arms, I believe, get most of the growth. Most of your arm and shoulder growth will come from the secondary work from back and chest. So when you're moving big numbers on back and chest, your arms will be grown. I don't believe that it's curls and press downs that make your arms big. But try getting a bodybuilder to not do curls and press downs. It doesn't work. It's like trying to take candy from a baby. It's not going to happen. So what I'll do is, and I have a training protocol that I put together and have written about extensively, where you train, basically the crux of it is you train back and chest twice as much as you train shoulders and arms, and that balances out the work with your upper body so you're not overtraining arms. Now the problem is you got to actually get them to do it and stick with it, and then they only hit shoulders and arms maybe every 10 days. Then all of a sudden they're like, hey, you don't curl anymore. First they'll tell you, oh, my arms aren't growing. They're just not growing. I don't like this is crap. My arms are getting smaller. I hear that a lot. Your arms are getting smaller. You're training chest and back more, so they're getting smaller. And then when you get them talking and you start asking questions, they're stronger. Well, I ain't getting stronger. Okay, there isn't a muscle in your body that's going to get stronger and not get bigger. It doesn't happen. I better be careful. If you're doing maybe triples and you're doing like a powerlifting type set, that's completely different. Okay, so if there's any powerlifters, then you got it. But other than that, if there aren't any powerlifters, then you need to get it. If you're in bodybuilding rep ranges and you're getting stronger, and that doesn't necessarily mean the weight goes up. If the reps are going up with the same weight, you're still progressing, you're still getting strong. That muscle has to grow. And just to make sure I cover the other side, when you're dieting and you're losing a lot of weight, and bodybuilders will do this when they're heavy weights, the super heavies, they freak when they start losing muscle. You will. You'll be getting small. You won't lose muscle, but you'll be getting small. You'll be like, I'm shrinking. And then your boys will mess with you and they'll tell you you're getting smaller. That'll mess with you even more. And then you're like, I'm losing muscle. As long as you're holding strength, you're not losing muscle. You can't lose muscle and hold strength. It just doesn't work. Now, if you're losing strength, you can lose a little bit of strength and not necessarily lose muscle. I'll talk about that more when we get into the nutrition part, because then you get into going flat, losing energy. things like that. You got your top set at the beginning, you might still be strong, but you fade off real quick because you're low carb, low calorie, that's completely different.